So in the recent Red Skies update, War Thunder finally saw a new battle rating ceiling of 11.0 for both aircraft and tanks. Now this was fantastic. I know many of you will say that it didn't go far enough, and I've no idea why this BR decompression wasn't also applied to helicopters. I can certainly think of a couple that belong there, KA-52. But credit where credit's due, this was a very nice step towards the decompression we actually need, and has afforded a new lease of life to several vehicles and lineups, mostly the 9.7s. But there is one issue I feel like we need to talk about, and that is vehicles like this. This is the Challenger 2F, and along with many of the most capable vehicles and top tier vehicles for their respective nations, such as the Leopard 2A6, F4E Phantom, etc., it was raised to a new battle rating of 11.0. Out of the 4 main battle tanks we're going to talk about today, this is the only one which I have right now. I had the rest temporarily on loan from Gaijin, so I have played them, but they are all kind of in the same boat. Those other tanks are the Ariete PSO and the Type 90 and Type 90B. Now obviously none of these vehicles even come close to stacking up against the Leopard 2A6, which is still arguably, if not definitely, the most capable MBT in the game individually, though the T80 BVM may give it a real run for its money, and the M1A2 certainly isn't far behind. Russia also definitely has the best top tiered lineup with the T72B3 and T90A, along with the KA-52 or Mi-28, Tunguska, etc., despite maybe not having the best tank overall, and the Americans have by far the most deadly jets for ground RB. You may not realise this, but the Western powers in War Thunder currently do not have a single 10.7 main battle tank. Many of the top tier SPAA are that battle rating, but only Russia and China have any 10.7 MBTs, Russia having 3. Now this I see as pretty stupid, as it defeats the whole purpose of BR decompression, when despite being only very slight upgrades over their base 10.3 counterparts, both the Ariete PSO and Challenger 2F set 2 hull places above, while the Leopard 2A5 and 2A6 both sit at that same BR2. Now, Challenger 2F does get the Charm 3 round, which for some reason the base Challenger 2 lacks, because you know, if there's any tank we're going to call overpowered and meta-defining, it's the Challenger 2, right? I mean, you tell me if you spot any flaws in that sentence. Even if that were enough of a benefit for the Challenger 2F to have, you know, actually still mediocre penetration for its BR, to warrant a full 2 steps up from the base Challenger 2, also pretty mediocre these days. What the hell is the Ariete PSO doing here? It is functionally identical to its 10.3 counterpart. They're certainly less capable than the T72B3 and the T90A, or the Type 99, etc. So then, what are they doing at the same BR as the Leopard 2A6? Then you've got the Type 90s, which definitely do not belong at this BR, although they are very good vehicles with high mobility and very quick autoloaders. They're not that good, with only the DM33 as their top shell, and then in the air there's also the Mirage 3E. This is one of, if not the worst of the top tier jets, substantially worse in most situations than the 3C, although it does get a radar warning system and countermeasures. Either way, it's nay 11.0 material, that should be left for the Mirage F1, which I do expect to come to the game very soon. The Mirage 3E is a side grade at best, if not a straight downgrade from the 3C model. The MiG-23M is also not 11.0 worthy, as it's not very good. Everyone who's played it, even those who understand missile combat and how to get the best out of the flogger, will tell you that there's not even a single 10.7 which it is superior to in really any scenario, even if 4Cs match this thing in BVR, which is, you know, kind of supposed to be its specialty. Now this isn't all the weird balance to come out of this patch. For example, why are the new Finnish SAMs, the ITO-90Ms, at a battle rating above the German Flak-Rad, which is faster and more mobile and has more of the same missiles without having that ridiculously tall silhouette? Come to think of it, why is the Canadian ADAT in the British tray, which has no gun, not just the same, but a higher VR than the Tunguska, which is arguably the best AA out of all of them? But swinging back over to the main battle tanks, it's fairly obvious to see why Gaijin have done this, and that is that these so-called minor nations don't appear to be too power creeped. After all, the Ariete PSO is the same BR as the Leopard 2A6, so it must be just as good, right? It just looks better if all nations have at least one competitor at the BR ceiling, even if on closer inspection it doesn't really belong there. Now, the first thing I was going to bring up in regards to this is China, who do lack an 11.0 ground vehicle. I immediately said, but if it's okay for China, then why don't the Ariete, Type 90s and Challenger 2F just stay at 10.7 as well? But the reason why this is okay, or at least I assume this is Gaijin's logic here, is that China still has room for a further advancement of their main battle tank in the Type 99A variant, which would be quite a big improvement over the base Type 99. In fact, it's very similar to a BVM, but with a CITV. So China, who still have one more tank to come, have that headroom at BR 11.0 to put it at, while Italy and Britain, both of whom lack an option for a top tier main battle tank, no, Challenger 3 is not at all an option, have their top tanks go up to 11.0 even if they are far from equal. There are two major problems with this. First of all, in that it doesn't raise hopes for Japan's Type 10 MBT to come to the game, because if it were planned, just like I'm sure the Type 99A is planned, then why would the Type 90s not be staying down at 10.7, just like the Type 99? That example also falls down when you look at France, with the Mirage 3E existing as an 11.0 jet, despite the Mirage F1 surely coming. Gaijin are effectively saying here that the Mirage 3E is equally as effective as the Phantom and MiG-21 BIS, when it's not even close. Like I said, 99% of players will far prefer the 3C. You've also got Sweden lacking an 11.0 jet, and of course we know that the Saab Viggen is coming to the game very soon. In fact, I was shocked not to see it this patch. So really, this is just a big mess, where none of these reasons or logical angles apply the same to everybody. The second problem is one I mentioned briefly earlier, in that this defeats completely the whole purpose of decompressing BRs in the first place. Instead of actually spacing out different tanks like the Challenger 2F and Type 90 from the Leopard 2A6 and T80 BVM, Gaijin have effectively just erased the number 10.7, because you can't build a lineup around an AA. And you can't even call this some sort of bias towards Russia and China, even if we suspend disbelief for a moment and pretend that some Russian bias exists in this game. Hold your comments. BR 11.0 made absolutely no difference to the Russian 10.7s, when everything they could fight just got raised to 11.0 anyway. There are literally no 10.7s for them to fight. Even if there were, you can't make a match purely out of 11.0s, so anything above 10.0 can pretty well guarantee being up-tiered every time. That's just how top tier BRs work. So Gaijin have done some decompression, and the 9.7s are very much enjoying it, because all the 10.7s need to be up tiered every game, and therefore they no longer have to fight much that succeeds them. But Gaijin have failed to space apart vehicles that need to have two different BRs, while at the same time making the BR below top tier entirely redundant, because it could never get its own matchmaker, even if you were seeing entirely 11.0 BR matches. Effectively, Gaijin have just placed a hard BR wall above 9.7s, which is something we actually used to have and many players enjoyed utilising it, but that was a temporary fix at best, and not a very good one. I think the culprit of this issue is that Gaijin's balance team, if they even have one, which given some questionable balancing decisions, not least of which these ones themselves, they appear not to. But assuming they do have one, they definitely aren't coordinating with one another, and you can see this based on how vehicles are balanced up against each other. For example, those Swedish AA we were talking about earlier. The ITO 90M is obviously better than the preceding ASRAD by a wide metric, meaning it sits at a higher BR as it should. But even if we assume someone in Gaijin's balance team played the two to gauge that difference, they certainly weren't then referring back to the German Flarakrad, which is slightly superior to the ITO. They were only balancing it in relation to its singular direct predecessor in that tech tree, and the French one, of course, as a copy-paste vehicle, gets the exact same battle rating. Is the Mirage 3E an upgrade from the 3C? Well, in a way, yes. It is equipped with technology that allows it to better handle combat at top tier, in theory. so in theory it belongs at a higher BR than the 3C. But is it a compatriot to the F4E and MiG-21 BIS? Hell no, it's not even close. In practice, the Mirage 3E's deplorable maneuverability and speed characteristics make it a side grade to the C model at best anyway, and the difference in its BR is simply Gaijin not understanding the combat that takes place in their own game due to lack of experience with it and understanding of the concepts of real-life air combat, but this does demonstrate the issue. Balance at top tier is a complete mess, because vehicles are either being balanced compared to those in their own tech tree they succeed, or balanced based on comparators in other trees, but not both, and there is no rhyme or reason to which vehicles are balanced in which way. The differences between the Ariete and Ariete PSO, those differences being next to non-existent, are apparently worth not just 1 but 2 steps up in battle rating, while the differences between the Leopard 2A5 and 2A6 are completely ignored, and the differences between the PSO and 2A6, orders of magnitude beyond those between the PSO and the base Ariete, are apparently inconsequential. The other funny factor here is that while the Western powers lack any 10.7 MBT, Russia and China lack any 10.3 vehicle at all, besides the Tunguska and helicopters. How then are the 10.3 MBTs such as the M1A1 or Challenger 2 supposed to have their own matchmaker, as they're 2 steps rather than 1 away from the top BR and could expect some matches away from that bracket, if there are no 10.3s that can oppose them? Either the Russian 10.7s all fight 10.3 opponents with no 10.7 counters, or both 10.3 and 10.7 become irrelevant BRs that can only be up-tiered into top-tier matches. Both of these scenarios are what we call bad. Effectively, Gaijin didn't decompress anything at all, they just claimed the credit for doing so whilst moving everything up 1 level. If I move back 1 step but you come 1 step towards me, we haven't actually changed our distance at all, have we? The worst thing is that this brings all of the negatives that Gaijin have always listed as their reasons for not decompressing BRs further in the past, with almost none of the positives that such decompression should bring, justifying those risks. In fact, the effects of this new 11.0 BR were to actually compress things even harder, while simultaneously reintroducing a hard BR wall at 9.7. Only your Challenger 1s and Leopard 2Ks will notice any real change from this new BR ceiling, while you still have ridiculousness where vehicles sit above contemporaries that outclass them in almost every regard. We can even see this example of inconsistent balance a little lower in the BRs, where yes, the Mystère 2A is superior to the Ouragan and Baragon, which are balanced 7.7s, while the Mystère 2C beats the 2A, and the new Mystère 4 beats the Mystère 2C. None of these then stack up to the likes of the Super Mystère, which is a balanced 9.0. It certainly couldn't be 9.3 because it's worse than the likes of Shenyang F5, or come to think of it, 9.3 is another one of those BRs that became almost unused, but the Yak 38 comes to mind. The problem here is that only the Super Mystère and Ouragan/Baragon, I apologise for the butchering of those actually quite beautiful French words, are being balanced compared to other nations' contemporaries, while the others are all just stacking the BRs in between, succeeding each other in a way that makes sense in the vacuum of the French tree alone. The problem then arises when you see that apparently the Mystère 4A is superior to the MiG-15 BIS and F-Sabres, which it is most definitely not. If you move the Sabre and MiG up, however, considering that you can't move the Mystère 4 down without placing it at the BR as the counterpart it is designed to succeed, then you have to completely reorganise balance at this whole BR region entirely. All the while, new vehicles are being added into the game every 2 months. It's a battle that can't be won, at least not in the way Gaijin have been trying to win it. And this is why in the past I've suggested that a summit where content partners, those of us who already work in part with the company and spend hours daily across all of this game, could help Gaijin fill in the holes where their own mixture of knowledge and use of one-size-fits-all algorithms fails. And other games such as World of Tanks, World of Warships, and especially EVE Online have proved that this can work. The fact that such a council could also provide some advice on how to fix core issues with RRB, for example, doesn't hurt either. As for this particular topic itself, I feel as though the answer is fairly simple. The Challenger 2 and Ariete PSO, Type 90 and Type 90B, the Mirage 3E, MiG-23M, etc. just should not be 11.0 vehicles. Despite being at the very top of their respective tech trees, this doesn't make them equals to the likes of Leopard 2A6 or F4E, and the way Gaijin have balanced these vehicles destroys the very notion of battle rating decompression. Although maybe that's exactly what Gaijin set out to do in the first place, so that we'd all shut up about it. Either way, there are a lot of content creators currently praising Gaijin to high heaven for their decompression, and even I have said that we should be very thankful to them for the step, but the work is far from done, and upon deeper inspection, this move to 11.0 may actually be more regressive than helpful, at least to anything but a T-72B, Leopard 2K, or F100. There are also plenty of vehicles that can be added very easily to fill in the missing BR places, and adjustments to tanks like the Leopard 2A4, which can receive DM33 and go to 10.3, as despite being a B-Tech armoured Leopard, this model is from 1994. The C-Tech Leopard 2A4, Leopard 2A1 to fill in the 2A4 spot at 10.0, M1A1HA, J35J Draken, MiG-17F, F86H and Avon Sabre, MiG-21 SPSK for Germany, and a huge number of other vehicle variants can all be added very easily to fill in the BRs and properly allow for decompression without many of the issues I've brought up here. These vehicles wouldn't take it all long to model, would open up many options for lineups and what we call synergy between vehicles, and could be folded so as not to lengthen the grind to an unreasonable level for smaller upgrades than are worth the time. Although, once again, PSO. Gaijin have to be willing to have nations like Britain and Italy just not have any tanks at the top BR of the game if things are to be balanced. Calling the Ariete PSO an 11.0 tank so that you can say Italy have one and therefore are equal to Germany is not balance. Putting the Ariete PSO at 10.7 or even 10.3 alongside equivalent to its capability is. And while it's unfortunate that Italy and Britain have failed to produce anything that stands up in direct competition with the likes of T80 BVM, Leopard 2A6 or the soon to come M1A2 SIP, I feel like this is a far better alternative than blatant imbalance in the BRs between nations. I can see a future where we're up-tiering the PSO and Challenger 2F again when BRs are eventually raised one more step to 11.3, which again isn't doing what decompression is supposed to do and spacing out vehicles so that they don't have to be the same BR. Or I can see a future where the top Italian and British tanks, the Ariete PSO and Challenger 2F, are a full 1.0 away from the Leopard 2A6, M1A2 SIP, etc., and are allowed to shine at what is top BR for them specifically. The latter sounds far better to me, especially if it gets rid of these BRs where just no vehicles exist, because Gaijin failed to actually decompress the BRs. It just isn't necessary to have all nations extend right up to the same BR ceiling, especially if the alternative is that the top tier tanks for these minor nations are far enough below the top Germans and Americans that they get to be down-tiered in game and therefore are very fun to use. Though if you want to pair the Ariete PSO with an Italian F16 one day, you take the L and force yourself into top BR matchmaking. That's all for this video. I hope you have enjoyed, and that if you did, you leave a like and subscribe to this channel for more content like this. I hope you'll have found this video interesting and that you leave your own opinions, agree or disagree, in the comment section down below. If you do want to support this channel, then feel free to subscribe on Pledstove for just a few cents a month. It really does go a long way, and I thank you to everyone who already has. Make sure to come follow me on Twitch. We stream 3 times a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And until next time, thanks for watching. I'll catch you lads on the battlefield. Maybe abusing flaps better than I am as well. It takes me a while to actually fucking delayed turning was a great move. Yeah, flying the actual flight path for a second instead of just trying to pull him into the HUD immediately. Oh, that's sexy. That was a good shot.